Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
I'm Chris Clements.
We are grinding away this week.
I have newfound respect for people who do this every day.
Yeah.
And have producers who kind of prepare everything for them, and they work all through the day preparing for the next day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something else. This
It's
is
our
our
third day in a row.
third podcast in a row, 3 days,
3 days in a row.
which is great. You know,
Yeah.
Why not?
I mean, there's plenty to talk about.
there's nothing to talk about. Nothing's happening.
Nothing's happening. So, for people who are loyal listeners, listen to everything. You'll know that the
Still subscribe. Give us 5 stars.
Yeah, the
Appreciate
previous
that.
episode with Mark Thiessen from the Washington Post, AEI, was a phenomenal.
You know, it was really an honor, and hopefully he's listening. But it was really an honor just to do the interview.
Yeah.
And I found myself as we were sitting there, and this is audio only, so you can't see any video on it, but just feeling really blessed and lucky.
Yeah.
I met Mark. I said on the podcast, 10 years ago at a forum retreat, and he was nice then and accommodating, but gosh, we really got into some big subjects, and I hope everybody goes back and listens to it. And the work that AEI is doing, just a little plug for AEI, the work that they are doing in terms of tax policy and also foreign policy with the work in Ukraine and this minerals deal, they've been very intricate in formulating a lot of this, a big part of this deal.
Yeah. And if you are not a reader of his column, today is Thursday, the 27th. You'll hear this Friday is when this will come out. So yesterday's column, the Washington Post, Mark's talks about the mineral deal, which if you listen to the podcast, you've read the column.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and we had a little event for AEI after the podcast, and basically he just reiterated everything he said in the podcast, which was great. We got some good shouts.
A little bit of sad news. Gene Hackman has passed away.
Yeah, I woke up to that this morning.
He has been one of my favorite actors just because the diversity of parts he's played. And, one of my favorite is him as the coach in Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest movies ever.
I
and
loved
he's just
him in Unforgiven.
Unforgiven.
I thought he was tremendous. And then if you're a Gen Xer, I mean, he is Lex Luthor.
Yeah, right.
The greatest criminal mind of our time.
That's right. That's right. I mean, he has just. I was telling Alyssa this morning. I was like, man, now I kind of feel like I just need to go on a Gene Hackman movie, binge.
Yeah, I have.
Because there's just a bunch that I
French
haven't
Connection.
seen for a while.
I don't know if I've ever seen.
That's exactly what I told her. I feel like I have, but then I don't really.
I've
remember
seen the car chase, which apparently was illegal. Like they staged it and they didn't get permission. I read that this morning.
Huh?
I didn't realize that they had staged this car chase and they didn't get permission from the city of New York. So I think that's where it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but initially they were saying maybe monoxide poisoning, and now they're finding.
Well, they're saying that there was no gas leak. I just read an updated story on it. So kind of weird.
And they're finding some pills now.
I didn't realize that he was 95.
Yeah, he had retired 20 years ago.
Yeah, I knew that he'd been out of the biz for a while, but you kind of lose track of people's age when you don't see them, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't like he went out on a high note with the movie. His last movie was Moose something, or with Ray Romano,
something like that.
Yeah. But sad day.
Birdcage is one of the. He's such a great.
Birdcage with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane.
Nathan Lane. He's the
one
senator.
of the great movies ever. He plays the dad.
Yeah. The senator. That's awesome.
The senator. Yeah. Tremendous. I go back to Unforgiven along with Clint Eastwood, and just how his presence and how he embodied this evil man who controlled the town, and it was so good, so good.
And he really had some range because he was funny. He could be very funny. He'd carry a comedy. He obviously could be the evil villain. He could be the inspiring coach. I mean, he was the everyman actor.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very, very skilled. You know, I didn't know that he really broke into Hollywood at age 34 with Bonnie and Clyde.
He was a late bloomer.
Yeah. So his first major movie, Bonnie and Clyde, and he gets the supporting actor nod.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck?
And French Connection, he got an Emmy or a Oscar for.
And then he got supporting actor again for Unforgiven.
Yeah. There you go.
But his seminal role, for those of us who still love Christopher Reeve,
the original Superman,
is Lex Luthor.
But the Superman,
the greatest criminal mind
right.
of our time.
Right. So
with Otis and Miss Tessmacher.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Some of the great comedy bits ever.
Yeah. So speaking of Washington,
RIP.
we talked about Washington Post, Mark Thiessen on yesterday. So there's also been a little bit of news breaking about the Washington Post.
Yes, so the
you
owner,
had some thought.
Yeah, the owner Jeff Bezos, I think he's listening to our podcast because he has two new pillars for the Washington Post, and that's personal liberty for the editorial page. They're going to revamp their editorial page, and under the pillars of personal liberty. And free
enterprise.
And free enterprise, basically, and free markets is what he said.
So freedom.
So freedom, free enterprise. If they embrace the faith part to cater to that part of the country where religious freedom is growing and strong, my goodness, what is happening to the Washington Post? And I made a comment to Mark Thiessen, asked him if he might be the new editor. And he would not comment.
He would not comment.
He would not comment. But, when you have an editorial page, and I was thinking about this earlier, that labels Jennifer Rubin as the conservative, who, if anyone knows or has read Jennifer Rubin, she has been an anti-Republican for as long as I can remember. I don't remember anything conservative coming out of...
Oh, I do. 20 years ago.
20 years ago, before she was mummified by Trump?
The Trump, I mean, you want to talk about...
But she was never like a movement person.
Well, yeah, she was kind of intellectual, but she was fairly conservative in the day. But I think that Trump broke her brain because she
Broke
went
a lot of people's brain.
completely 180 degrees. Completely 180 degrees. Bill Kristol.
Bill
another
Kristol
example.
broke his brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonah Goldberg. A little bit with the Dispatch. The Dispatch started off as this really thoughtful, dyed in the wool conservative piece with Jonah and others, and then they became this never Trumper, just cesspool.
Maybe
where nothing Trump could do could ever measure up to anything. I'm a founding member. I'll just say that up front. There's a lot of good things that happen on the Dispatch, but the comments are just, good Lord.
So it's the stuff that I see from Jonah. I mean, he's clearly not a Trump guy, but I don't think he has completely abandoned the conservative movement like Jennifer Rubin and Bill Kristol have.
No.
They have completely abandoned the conservative movement.
I mean, he's still a fellow at AEI, to be said. He's a brilliant writer. Some of my favorite conservative books are by Jonah, for sure.
Yeah.
But just, I mean, what the Dispatch was and then what it became, I stopped.
Well, yeah.
I stopped logging on. At least in the National Review, if we're talking about those sorts of things, I mean, they have, a whole, it's kind of like AEI. They have a whole gamut of different opinions, different reporting that you can agree or disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fairly, tame.
Yeah.
I guess. They don't even allow the comments to get out of control and anything like that. So that's a good thing.
Right.
But Jennifer Rubin now is she starting her own podcast or something? She left X, Twitter. She left the Washington Post because they wouldn't endorse Kamala Harris for president, as many people have. And so now here comes Jeff Bezos saying we're going to be an editorial page based on two principles: personal freedom and free markets.
Well, and
which kind of sounds like the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, for all the people who are like freaking out about that, well, one, he owns it. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it. And two, he's a business guy. He understands what makes America great.
Yeah.
And, is he a conservative? I don't know. Is he liberal? I have no idea. But it
Well, I
doesn't
think
matter because
socially speaking, you can pretty much bet no, in terms of what he's invested in the past. But he is a businessman guy. He's in D.C. It's Trump Nation right now in D.C. He needs certain things from the president, I would imagine. And he was at the inauguration.
Yeah.
And so I would guess that the opinion pages aren't going to go, totally pro Trump. I can't imagine that. The National Review hasn't. Certainly the Wall Street Journal hasn't been.
Right.
In the last 6 months. They've been calling out Trump on a number of different things, rightly or wrongly. That's fine. But I think he's pivoting to get just more in line with the other papers that have been able to at least keep their subscriptions and grow and moving to a center left, center right, opinion mantra.
Yeah.
He seems to think that he's going to get some traction on that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
We certainly agree with those,
Yeah. So
with those pillars.
So another big piece is that the Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has said that she's going to release the at least some of the Epstein.
We're online right now. I'm looking for anything. I'm not seeing it. I would think like the Daily
Nothing
Wire
yet.
would be breaking news, but no.
So that may happen.
Do you believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
No.
No.
No, I do not.
Yeah.
How
many other paintings of Bill Clinton does he have?
I don't know, but speaking of underage women and
250, she said on Jesse Waters' show.
Well, yes, I can believe that, but aside from Epstein, you've got this Andrew Tate guy who has flown from wherever he was, Romania. Or whatever.
He's a total pedophile.
Yeah, he's now in Florida, and Ron DeSantis is like, "You're not welcome here."
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
No, we don't need people like that.
No, because he is. I don't understand. I don't understand the appeal.
Yeah.
And I don't understand people like Tucker Carlson who give him a platform and allow him to be even, exposed to anyone, because he's just a creepy guy that is not a true man.
No, he's completely creepy.
Yeah, but he tries to present himself as, this is the manly man. I'm what a real man is. No, that's not. Real men don't piddle little girls.
No, they don't think that dating youngins is the way to go. and they find virtue in marriage. They find virtue in family.
Yeah,
and they find virtue in being the protector, the provider, and the connector to our Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what your role biblically is as a man.
Right.
And if you can embrace that, you don't have to embrace that. It's one of the hardest things you're ever going to have to do, but it's one of the most beautiful things you'll ever do.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I thought about, because I know that there are some people like, well, what's the big deal about the Epstein list? But it's just all in the past. Why would it's to hold people accountable? I mean, one of the things
it's
that
one
we
of the
have
most
really,
disgusting things that has happened in our country.
One of the things that we've really gotten away from in our society is accountability. People do things and then try to brush it off. And that is setting a terrible example to our kids, who if we're raising them right, hold them accountable. So we need to be held accountable as well. And if those people traveled to his island and engaged in relationships,
there was only one reason to go to the island.
Engaged in relationships with underage girls, they need to be held accountable.
They need to be called out.
I don't care who's on the list.
Neither do I.
They need to be held accountable.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there will be people, at least one, maybe four, I don't know, because I don't know what the list is. I'm sure there will be people who I have up to now respected and admired, and I will be disappointed. But you know what? Life's full of disappointments.
What about this idea that he was a CIA asset, and that was part of the reason they were letting him go go do whatever he wanted to do.
I don't know if it was that or Mossad or both. I mean, it clearly
that's going to come out.
Yeah,
I mean, that has
maybe.
to come out.
I mean,
in terms of what role, how did
why-
the government let this go on for so long? And then what was the tipping point to finally arrest him? And then he's in a New York jail, and he supposedly kills himself, which nobody believes.
The U.S. attorney in Florida under Bush, can't remember his name.
It was Azar.
No,
wasn't it?
I can't remember who it was. But he really buried this thing. He either
wasn't it Alex Azar's brother, or was he a judge?
I don't know. Anyway, but at the time that they had him arrested, and they could have thrown the book at him. They could have dealt with this long before other stuff happened. They let him walk.
Yeah.
And so that raises questions. So hopefully we'll get to the bottom of this. I feel like it's important for accountability's sake. The thing I'm really intrigued by is the JFK files.
Yeah.
When are they coming?
And Congresswoman Luna had sent a letter, I think, last week to the Attorney General saying, "Where are you with this? What's the status of this?" Because she's part of the subcommittee or the committee that actually has jurisdiction on this in the House.
Okay, good.
So I just read that the other day, and that's great. But she has not received a reply from the current Attorney General. I think from what I heard last night about the Epstein files, they're going through redactions of the victims to make sure that their privacy is maintained.
Okay.
But the flight logs will be released. And then the JFK files, we'll see if your thoughts on this issue, that the CIA had a prominent role in assassinating JFK, is actually true.
Yep.
Why do you think they've been so hesitant to release these files based upon the excuse of protecting sources and methods? You studied this much more than I have.
I think part of the issue is that there's still people who are alive who are involved in this.
Who are complicit?
Yeah. And they're probably they probably have connections to Russia. I mean, there's a reason that Lee Harvey Oswald went to Russia. We don't know all the reasons yet, but all of it's intertwined.
Yeah,
no question.
That was the fascinating part about Oliver Stone's movie, because he just sort of threw everything out there and allowed you to kind of pick and choose maybe where you fell.
Right, and the thing that's interesting is that a lot of things that have come out since that movie, because that movie was 1995?
No, that was like 91.
Okay.
It was shortly before I remember seeing it. And it was shortly before I graduated from college and went to DC for the first time.
Okay.
And I remember just being inspired by it. Like, this is just amazing. If any of it, and my dad and I kind of had an argument about it coming out of the theater. He's like, "Oh, that was all just a bunch of BS or whatever." I go, "Yeah, but Dad, if even a sliver of it within the connecting of the dots is even true, you've got to sit back and go, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable."
It's the Jim Garrison component of that. He was the prosecutor in Louisiana who he was the Kevin Costner character in that movie. Yet I highly recommend people read his book. I mean, there are a lot of things that raise questions. And since then there's a lot of things that have been validated, some things that have been proven wrong.
Do you think we will finally find out without a doubt that there was a second shooter that so many people believe?
I don't see how it's possible that we don't.
Yeah.
I don't see how it's possible that we don't.
So,
I mean, I just don't know. I would be so flabbergasted if, there had to be a second shooter. I mean, it's the magic bullet theory is
insane.
Hogwash.
It's just insane.
Hogwash. Thank you, Arlen Specter.
Yeah. It's insane. It doesn't make any physical sense.
No. So
But you got that coming out. You have the RFK files coming out. You have the MLK files coming out. There's a lot of files coming out.
A lot of
There's
things
going to be a lot revealed.
things
and hopefully they do it in a way that is complete transparency.
Right.
Because if they don't, there's going to be a huge backlash.
Yeah, I mean, why talk about it? Why you say you're going to do it and not just go all the way? Because if you don't, then it just creates additional conspiracies.
Yeah.
And we need to get past the conspiracy theories. We need to get to the truth.
Yeah, and if the CIA was involved, get it out.
Yeah.
Get it out.
So we talked in our previous podcast with Mark Thiessen briefly about how much we enjoyed the cabinet meeting that Trump held.
It was a cabinet meeting.
Yeah, an actual cabinet meeting. And
Mark mentioned that it was unlike any cabinet meeting he'd ever be a part of.
Right. And he's worked in the White House.
He's working in the White House. He's like, that was rather spirited.
And so there's going to be another bite of the apple on this email that Elon is going to send to federal workers. And it's interesting because at the cabinet meeting, what he was saying is this wasn't really as much of a performance review as just a gut check, or not a gut check, but just a check on who's alive.
Well,
because
when you have, like the president said, when you have people who are 200 years old getting Social Security checks, you need to make sure that
they're convinced that there's a number of federal workers, and I'm doing it for those that are not watching, air quotes, federal workers who are not federal workers. And so they're going to send this email.
Illegal immigrants,
and
a lot of them with stolen Social Security numbers.
Says if you don't respond, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're going to stop being paid, which I think is totally legitimate.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Well, and then I read this morning that the president is expanding DOGE's purview over the agencies. There's going to be a DOGE liaison to every single agency, and he's ordered every department to cut at least 15% of their budget. And I thought Elon yesterday, I thought the greatest thing that he did was framing the reality of where we are as a country, and that is headed towards a fiscal cliff.
Right.
And if we cannot grow our economy at 3 to 4% a year, put more money back into the hands of the taxpayers, reform our government, seek out waste, fraud, and abuse, and get trillions in savings, not billions, trillions, and make that the focal point, we're going to be in deep, deep trouble.
Yeah. And it's
because modern monetary theory is a joke.
Well,
and with it and growing the budget from $4 trillion to $7 trillion, like the last president did, is not sustainable. We have to go back to a 2019 budget line.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Republicans have the guts to do that. Well,
they voted. They got their budget resolution passed yesterday or the day before. By the skin of their teeth. Thomas Massey voted against it, but all the other Republicans. So they were.
Well, Thomas Massey's going to vote against.
He's going to vote against everything.
And I like Thomas Massey, for theater.
Yeah. I agree with some of the stuff, but I also disagree with some of his tactics. But anyway, the one thing that I do know, having worked in the institution for 14 years.
Was it that long?
It was. I was a staffer for 14 years in the U.S. House. Congress will never do the job. This has to be done outside of Congress, because Congress, the incentive is to spend, always.
Yeah.
Earmarks, special projects, you name it. There is no incentive to cut. And
or freeze.
I
mean, even when we saw with President Trump trying to just freeze, expenditures and get a handle on what's happening, the pushback was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Even if you instituted like a 4-year freeze in spending, just to let the economy catch up and revenues expand. They don't even want to do that.
Well, and I think that this really does present. We've talked about this before, but the more I've thought about it, the more I think it presents an opportunity for the executive branch under Trump to say, we are going to interpret your laws in a way that minimizes spending as much as possible, because Congress basically passes laws that give the administration a blank sheet of paper that say,
free reign.
You create the infrastructure, the rules, and all of the minutia, the details of how to implement this. And I think the Trump administration, Russ Vought at the OMB, should come back and say, okay, here's what we're doing, and do what Elon's doing, make huge cuts in all these kinds of things, and then tell Congress, look, if you want it different, do your freaking job.
Yeah.
And
We've
actually,
talked about this a lot.
Actually write the legislation in a way that was originally intended by the founders.
Yeah.
The original intent of the founders was that Congress makes the laws. What Congress did decades ago was decided, that's a little hard. Let's make the bureaucrats do it. So that's why we have rulemaking processes.
Yeah, but that's what that's what happens when you have these omnibus bills, because nobody wants to do the hard work of appropriations.
Right.
The entire reason we have appropriations committees with purview over the individual departments, agencies, is so that they can regulate them accordingly and give them direction as to what they want to see happen. They haven't done that in years.
No.
That process has sailed, and that's a dereliction of congressional duty. And so I think you're right. I think Russ, who we need to have back on the show when we're back in D.C. in June, I think there's this groundswell to say, how much more money can we cut internally in terms of bodies or wasteful programs or canceling contracts or anything else, and return back to the Treasury. Yeah. And return back to the taxpayers. Right. In some sort of rebate, which everyone's like, oh, well, that will be inflationary. I'm like, well, not if you're cutting expenses and you're able to give a rebate back to the taxpayers to spend within the economy, or invest. That's huge. Yeah.
Well, and I'll say it again. One of our sponsors, Americans for Prosperity Arizona, big on the tax cut extension,
No, they put out some material the last couple of days. They're really happy with the big, bad, beautiful bill.
Yeah.
Heard last night from our guests, however, that there is a groundswell of folks who would like to see two bills because they want to see some victories.
Well, they want to see,
They think that voting on border security, increased defense spending, that sort of thing makes a lot more sense because you have the momentum right now and can show those victories, where tax policy, regulatory reform, anything like that is just so unwieldy, and so many different winners and losers that you can point to that it becomes and it becomes unwieldy, and Trump has the ability to pass two bills.
Yeah.
This cycle.
I mean, I think
because they couldn't agree on a budget last year.
Right.
They can do two reconciliation bills. I want to be clear.
Right.
So normally you can only do one because of statute, but because they didn't pass a budget last year, you can do two this year.
Right.
So why not take it?
Well, yeah.
That's the feeling in the Senate,
and
I think that's what they're going to pursue, but we'll see.
We'll see. Because
they didn't think the House could do it.
Right. Trump got engaged and helped move that along. If you want to weigh in, go to americansforprosperity.actcenter.com. Or you just go to americansforprosperity.com and hit the Action Center tab, so you can sign the petition on the Trump tax cuts.
Yeah. Americans Prosperity is one of the largest grassroots organizations in the country, does great work in all the states to make sure our freedoms are preserved.
Yeah.
So, I like that for a plug.
That's a great plug. Because that's really true. I mean,
it is.
Just off the top of your head there.
I know, just off the top of my head.
I mean, that's how good they are.
I know.
You don't have to think about it.
I'm a great admirer of theirs.
Yeah. Well,
but I'm a think tank sort of guy. Well, I like them all.
And they're a do tank.
Yeah, they're a do tank. They are very action oriented.
Yeah. They're a think
Kind of like
tanks
our
and do
own
tanks.
local free enterprise club.
Yeah,
very action
much,
oriented.
very much a do tank.
Yeah,
for
they don't,
sure.
they're not only in the weeds; they're chopping the weeds. Now.
They're planting the weeds so that they can chop the weeds.
No, they hold elected officials accountable.
Yeah.
They call out our wayward governor when she's
Well,
wayward.
and she's been wayward. I think we talked about this. She vetoed the elections reform bill.
Yeah.
That would have made our elections more like Florida. And she took a real shot at Jake Hoffman. He's a legislator down at the legislature, saying you should run for governor if you don't like my appointments to these different agencies, because he's in charge of those
yeah, he can hold them
process.
up forever if he
And-
wants to.
Yeah, he's been holding them up because
F around and find out.
Yeah,
Katie Hobbs and your iPad.
yeah. So
Well, that's really interesting because I saw a poll the other day by your namesake, Mike Noble, who did for Noble Predictive Insights.
yes,
Who did a gubernatorial poll
yes, he did.
with Jake Hoffman in the poll.
Yeah, that was
odd.
That was odd
Because the only two people I know who are running for governor on the Republican side right now are Karen Taylor Robeson and Andy Biggs.
that's right.
But he had other people in that poll. People
Yeah.
like Charlie Kirk.
That's
and
weird.
and Jack McCain, which I don't know where that came from. I thought it was only for Republicans.
Yeah. Where is?
You're not going to bite on that, are you?
No, Jack
I mean-
McCain's a Republican.
I know he's a Republican, but
but
you know.
the Mike's
his sister's actually more
Mike's-
Republican than he is.
yeah
now.
Mike's inclusion of some of these folks did make it more muddled, and so his he put out some commentary
Yeah.
saying that there's no clear front runner. Well, I mean there is if you look at who's actually in.
Because you did your own poll.
Well, I didn't test primary voters.
Okay.
George Califf at Data Orbital
Yeah.
did, and that showed Biggs, up like 30 over. I think Karen Taylor Robeson was number 2, and Kimberly Yee was just under her at number 3. And what the poll that I did was to see who fared better against Hobbs in a general election matchup. And what it showed is that Biggs was up 1 over Hobbs, and Karen Taylor Robeson was down 2 to Hobbs.
Yeah.
So as of that moment, that snapshot in time, Biggs appears to be a better option for Republicans to nominate than Robeson against Hobbs.
Yeah.
So now,
And to be clear, like we said before, both are friends of the show, and they're welcome to come on and plead their case to the electorate when they see fit.
yeah, absolutely.
Like them both.
The one thing that Mike Noble's poll showed that's been consistent on all the polls is Hobbs is not in a position of strength.
And
So there's an opportunity.
Yeah, that's really unique for an incumbent. It's incredibly hard. You have the benefits of incumbency. Everyone talks about, and she is not in a good place in a head-to-head matchup, and that makes me think that perhaps she might see some opposition within her own party.
Right.
She has plenty of money, obviously, but we know from experience that money doesn't always buy the votes.
Right. Yeah. Here we go. Predicted insights. Let me see if
You're zipping through it.
I'm gonna look and see if he's got it up.
Yeah, I don't
Anyway.
understand the whole Charlie Kirk fascination.
Well, I think.
Was that that was news to me?
Well, he's apparently he'd been mentioned
Okay.
at some point early on, but I don't think that was ever.
I mean,
anything
Turning
serious.
Point
I mean, Turning
is-
Point is very supportive of Biggs.
It's
based on
a
all-
big
at least all the people
organization.
that I've
Throws
seen.
a great party. Lots of great speakers.
Yeah.
Nice conventions. It's made Charlie a very rich man.
Yeah.
So maybe he will run for
I don't
governor.
know. I don't think that's the case. But anyway, Hobbs is not in a position of strength, which is not good for her going into a midterm that's supposed to be a Democratic year because of the fact that we have a Republican president. That's been historically. But, history might be turned on its head yet again.
Well, and it really depends on what we just talked about. It depends on Donald Trump delivering on his promises to the electorate to keep this going full steam ahead. The Republicans have to stick together.
Yeah.
They have to get this tax bill done. If they do not get this tax bill done and everyone's taxes double, triple at the end of this year, that will be it.
That'll be
it.
That'll be a problem.
The Republicans will not get elected in the next cycle.
Yeah.
It will be complete. Because you have the business community coming behind them saying this needs to get done. You have olive branches to just everyday working Americans with tax on tips and no tax on Social Security. So you're ending double taxation. Possibly eliminating the death tax. Taking corporate taxes down to 15%, taking the capital gains tax down to 15%. Making some of those other taxes permanent. There's a lot of groundswell support for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the Democrats are like, well, you're cutting $800 billion for Medicaid, and there's nothing in there. That's the big nut they would have to cut. But Medicaid, as many people know, is bankrupt. It's completely corrupt. It needs to be completely reformed.
Well,
that's different than Medicare. And the states know it. The politicians know it. They haven't means tested that thing in a long time. They need to dive in there and make some changes.
There's a lot of concern about the Medicaid issue, but I think we can solve a lot of it through reform to make sure that we get the waste, fraud, and abuse out of it.
Yeah, the DOGE is coming for Medicaid.
There's definitely people.
I mean, most hospitals and doctors don't even take Medicaid anymore. Why? Because it's just the reimbursement rates are too low, and then there's so many people that they see that aren't even qualified.
Right.
Yeah. It's a big mess. It's a big, bad Biden mess.
So be on the lookout for the Epstein list. Be on the lookout for, I don't know when the JFK stuff's going to come.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything, any answer to Representative Luna's inquiry.
Yeah.
So, or what the big thing is.
I was going to mention this because it just...
We could keep going.
Yeah, I just have to. Let's finish on this.
All right.
So there was a concerted effort, as we all know, right up to late June of 2024.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Expect me to remember back that far?
Late June 2024, there was a debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
That was June 24th.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
So at that debate, the world recognized something that we had known because we have eyes.
Anyone paying attention.
Yeah. That
eyes
Joe
to see,
Biden,
ears to hear.
Joe Biden was not 100% together there.
No.
Right? And
despite what
the
Joe
reason
Scarborough was
the
saying.
reason it was a surprise to so many people is because they were being lied to by Joe Biden's inner circle, by the media that covered the White House, by commentators who were close to the White House. And one of those people who was very dismissive of any discussion about Biden's age or mental acuity was Jake Tapper of CNN. Well, guess what?
Yes.
Jake Tapper, along with Alex Thompson, are coming out with a new book.
I saw that.
They're coming out with a new book that's called Original Sin. President Biden's decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. Literally, one of the guys who was absolutely at the forefront of the cover-up of Biden's decline is now writing a book about Biden's decline.
Yeah, that would be like Joe Scarborough writing the same, or writing it with him. You know,
Yeah.
it's just what?
I mean,
What did Joe Scarborough say? This is the best Biden I've ever seen.
yeah, the best Biden I've ever seen. I mean, it just
Totally cogent is what he said.
it is
Like, what?
it is astounding to me that Jake Tapper. I mean, and this isn't me making it up. There are videos after video after video of Jake Tapper on air, haranguing Laura Trump and other people saying,
You can't say that.
That's not true.
You can't say that.
I mean, it's just absolutely
Well, but it even
bonkers.
goes deeper than him, because you have this big shakeup going on in the White House press corps right now, where the White House, Correspondents Association is basically being given the heave-ho
Yeah,
because of their coverage of Mr. Biden.
right.
And so the inner press pool now will be controlled by the White House, meaning the people who are on Air Force One, who are able to be there, the president in his most intimate moments and what have
Yeah.
you. And typically, the White House Correspondents Association would pick those people.
Right. And that is that. So
That has
our
been-
listeners understand that for the last few decades, the White House Correspondents Association, so the amalgamation of the media groups, right now, one of the authors of Politico Playbook is the chairman.
Yeah, he's
of
going
the
over
association.
he's going over to MSNBC for their new
Yeah, that's
show.
right. He's going to go do TV now.
Imagine that.
And they would pick who would be in the pool.
Yeah.
So there would be a print reporter, there'd be a TV reporter, there'd be a photographer, there'd be a cameraman, and these are the pool. So that goes on, and that's sometimes if there's a small situation, you send a pool in to the Oval Office because you can't fit all the things. You can't put so many press guys on Air Force One. You can do more than that's a bigger pool, and who has access to the White House briefings.
Absolutely.
Right? So they were the ones who decided who sits where, who gets to ask questions. Yeah. And Carolyn Leavitt, the new press secretary, and the communications staff and the president were like, wait a minute, what? Why do they get to decide?
Well, but
We should be able to decide.
absolutely, but it even goes deeper than that, because they were part of the cover-up of Biden's mental decline. They went along with the Biden administration's decision to have and Jen Psaki and then the binder lady, Jean, what's her name?
Jean
Lampierre, or whatever her name was.
remember.
But they went. I mean, if you were harken back years ago to Joe Biden's first press conference, when he had little note cards with questions on them and pictures
Right.
of the person
Who's
who's
gonna
going
ask the
to
question.
ask the question and what they look like, and then he had his response underneath the question. Who facilitated that? The Correspondents
White House
Association.
Correspondents Association.
So they are so incredibly corrupt. They were part of the entire thing. So this is just like, it's a comeuppance.
Yeah. Yeah. And look,
this is about your power and control, of which you exerted none of it when it came to the prior administration.
and
You questioned nothing until that debate. Everybody was silent.
right. And now they're screaming, "Oh, this is anti-First Amendment. This is not freedom of the press." Bull. There's still going to be pool reporters. There's still going to be mainstream media. There's
They
gonna be
added the
alternative
Huffington
media.
Post to the briefing room.
Yeah, I mean it's
Along with the Daily Wire and some
right.
other folks.
So look, presidents are going to get covered. It's just that
and by the way, let's just say it again. In the first 30 days, this president has answered 1,009 questions
yeah, that's right.
versus Joe Biden's 141
Right.
and Barack Obama's 170, whatever.
Yeah. Over 1,000 questions the first month.
He's
And-
more relaxed.
I mean,
he is having a ball with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And they've never had more access in their life. They're having to work.
Right. Exactly.
They're having to work. They have to get up in the morning. They have to prepare, and they have to be ready when the president says, "Come on in."
Yeah, because
Because they never had to do that in the last 4
For
years.
the last 4 years, they were like,
The last 4 years, it was 10 in the morning, and
the lid went on at
lid went
1.
down at 4:00.
or earlier.
Yeah, or earlier.
Yeah. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, when they say the lid,
there's-
that's when the president is done for the day.
Yeah.
He's not. There's going to be no.
Go back and look at it for yourself. There was nothing before 10, and nothing after 4, unless there was a dinner
Like
or
a state
something
dinner
that he
or-
was
yeah.
attending.
Right.
But beyond that, his schedule, if you went back and looked at the daily schedule, which you can go online and look at the president's daily schedule, they produce it, they print it, was nothing.
Yeah.
There was no schedule. And then he would leave every Friday, go to Rehoboth, put his toes in the sand, and pass out. That's not happening right now. And it is fantastic.
Yeah.
No matter
everybody's
what
working.
your political persuasion is, I would argue it's running out of
This
popcorn.
is the way it should be.
This
It
is
should
the way
a
the government should
vigorous
operate.
president doing his job, making the press do their job by covering him, and making us do our job by talking about it.
Absolutely. It creates excitement. It creates purpose, meaning for our country. The fact that we have a president who's actually trying to get things done
Yeah.
versus go put his toes in the sand
Whether
and
you
pass
agree
out.
or not. I mean, that's the thing, is that this is, you're engaging in the political process, in the public policy process, in this process of
And
America.
every American, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, should want to root out waste, fraud, and
Yeah.
abuse in our government.
That is
And
a
the fact that Democrats are freaking out and sticking, a stake in the ground for USAID and these other agencies that have been fleecing the American public for decades is outrageous.
yeah, waste, fraud, and abuse should be a nonpartisan goal.
It just makes no sense.
Rooting it out. All right.
All right.
Well, for more waste, fraud, and abuse, come back next time.
We'll see you next
Talk
week.
to you
Thank you
later.
so much. God bless.